In the glittering lobby of the Crescent Moon Hotel where chandeliers spilled gold across marble floors, Amara Thompson bent low with her mop, invisible in a sea of diamonds and tailored suits. To the wealthy guests, she was nothing more than background noise until her phone rang. One glance at the caller ID and her pulse spiked. University of Leiden. It was her 7th attempt at a scholarship, her one chance to escape 6 years of scrubbing floors. She shouldn't answer. Evelyn Harper, the ruthless manager, prowled nearby, hungry for mistakes, but Amara's trembling thumb pressed accept. Then it happened. A voice spoke rapid-fire Dutch, and without hesitation, Amara replied fluently, her tongue weaving words no one expected from a hotel servant. The conversation turned fluid, sharp, alive. But she wasn't alone. A man at the reception desk slowly turned his head. The billionaire owner of the hotel empire, Victor Langston. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes followed every syllable that spilled from her mouth. Around them, the lobby fell strangely silent, as though the very air leaned closer, and then, Thompson, Evelyn's voice cracked through the stillness like a whip. Gasps rippled. Phones paused mid-scroll. Amara's blood froze. She ended the call, her hands shaking. A single mistake could cost her everything, or had this mistake unlocked something no one could imagine? Because as she prepared for punishment, another command came, one no maid had ever received. She was summoned to the top floor. To him, to Victor Langston. Why would a billionaire demand to see a hotel servant who had broken the rules? And what secret had her Dutch words just uncovered? The Crescent Moon Hotel, nestled in Savannah's historic district, gleamed under Spanish moss-draped oaks, its grandeur a magnet for the elite. Amara, with her Georgetown linguistics degree, had cleaned its floors for 6 years, her ambitions buried under prejudice. Evelyn Harper, the housekeeping manager, enforced rigid rules, especially for Amara, whose education she dismissed. No phones, Thompson, Evelyn would snap, ignoring white receptionist casual calls. That morning, as Amara polished the lobby's chandelier-lit floors, the university call came. Her fluent Dutch, honed by years of study, flowed effortlessly, but Evelyn's icy voice cut through. You're done. Amara's heart sank, knowing the convention center bathroom's grueling double shifts awaited as punishment. Yet Victor Langston's presence in the lobby, his piercing stare, hinted at something more. The next day, a call from HR summoned Amara to the executive floor. In the elevator, surrounded by executives discussing mergers, she felt invisible as always. HR's office was a maze of glass and luxury, and Director Clara Vernon's words stunned her. Mr. Langston wants to meet you. Victor, 47, had turned failing hotels into empires. Why her? Amara's resume, ignored for years, listed fluency in Dutch, French, Mandarin, and Italian. As she entered his office, larger than her shared apartment, Victor held her file. 6 languages, Georgetown honors, and you're cleaning my hotel. Why? Amara hesitated, then spoke of her 47 ignored applications and 12 denied transfers, all blocked by Evelyn and operations director Malcolm Reed. Victor's eyes narrowed. Have you ever felt overlooked despite your talents? Share your story below and let's inspire change. Amara sat silently, her pulse racing, realizing that the fate of her life might finally shift. Victor leaned back, his sharp gaze unwavering, the silence in the office stretching until it felt unbearable. You should not be cleaning floors, he said at last. You should be at the table. Amara struggled for composure, her fingers tightening on the edge of the chair. She had dreamed of someone noticing, someone believing, but never imagined it would be the hotel magnate himself. He tapped her file with a precise finger, studying her. She explained the constant dismissals, the fabricated performance write-ups, the unapproved overtime hours that always landed on her schedule, the way Evelyn whispered to receptionists whenever Amara walked by. Victor's expression hardened, and he asked pointed questions, as if collecting evidence. At the end, he dismissed her with a curt nod. Return tomorrow. Quietly. That night, Amara could not sleep. The peeling paint of her small apartment walls seemed to close in, the noise of her upstairs neighbors like a drum. She replayed every word, unsure whether she was being tested or whether some invisible door had opened. Her phone buzzed with a message from HR. Report to the executive floor at 8 a.m. She stared at the screen until dawn, torn between dread and hope. When she arrived, Clara Vernon greeted her differently, an almost deferential tone replacing her prior clipped commands. Mr. Langston will see you in the boardroom. Inside, Amara froze. Executives in tailored suits surrounded the long mahogany table, their expressions unreadable. Victor motioned her to sit at his side. Gentlemen, ladies, this is Amara Thompson. She will interpret today. A Dutch delegation entered, and in that moment, Amara's fear dissolved. She slipped seamlessly into fluent dialogue, bridging jokes, cultural nuances, and complex financial terminology. The executives stared, astonished. The meeting, expected to falter, closed with a handshake sealing a multi-million-dollar contract. As they departed, Victor stood before the board. This woman ignored by our management just delivered what months of consultants could not. Remember her face. The room fell silent. Afterward, Clara escorted Amara to a temporary office, small but lined with bookshelves and a view of the river. Mr. Langston wants you to remain on call for international clients, she said. Amara sat down, hardly believing the chair beneath her. For the first time in 6 years, she was not invisible. Evelyn noticed within hours. She cornered Amara in the staff corridor, her voice a hiss. I don't know what trick you pulled, but this won't last. Amara, trembling but firm, met her eyes. It already has. That night, Evelyn filed a complaint, accusing Amara of insubordination. Victor intercepted it before HR could process. The next morning, Evelyn was summoned upstairs. She never returned to housekeeping. Malcolm Reed, the operations director, proved harder. He avoided confrontation, but his influence ran deep. Budgets, promotions, and schedules all had passed his desk. When Victor began auditing, hidden patterns emerged. Qualified minority employees overlooked. Overtime funneled to favorites. Contracts awarded to friends. Victor's wrath was methodical. Departments were reorganized. Reports demanded and corruption exposed. Through it all, Amara became his quiet ally, translating, documenting, and presenting evidence. Weeks turned to months, and the Crescent Moon Hotel transformed. Guests noticed the shift. Staff smiling, service smoother, the atmosphere lighter. Amara now wore tailored suits, her ID badge marked executive liaison. Her colleagues whispered with awe. Some congratulated, others envied, but no one dismissed her anymore. At night, she still returned to her modest apartment, yet her mirror reflected a woman no longer bowed. One evening, Victor invited her to dinner with investors. Nervous, she arrived early, rehearsing greetings in Mandarin. During the meal, she navigated 3 languages seamlessly, her voice steady, her posture dignified. Afterward, one investor remarked, "Without her, this deal would have collapsed." Amara felt her throat tighten, but she only smiled. Victor walked her outside, pausing under the glow of a street lamp. "Do you realize what you've done?" he asked. "You've proven more valuable than half my board." She lowered her eyes, unsure how to respond. "I only wanted a chance," she whispered. "And you took it," he replied. News spread through the city. Local papers ran features about the woman who rose from cleaning floors to shaping international deals. Strangers emailed stories of their own struggles, their own barriers. Amara responded to each with careful words of encouragement. She carried their voices with her into every meeting, determined never to forget the weight of invisibility. Still, shadows lingered. Malcolm Reed did not surrender easily. One afternoon, Amara discovered documents left intentionally on her desk, false translations designed to sabotage negotiations. She recognized the trap immediately and brought them to Victor. Together, they confronted Reed in the boardroom. He denied everything, but the evidence was irrefutable. Security escorted him out as staff watched, whispers trailing behind. Amara stood in the aftermath, realizing that the obstacles that once crushed her had finally broken instead. With Reed gone and Evelyn forgotten, Victor offered Amara a permanent executive role. Director of International Relations, he announced, placing the contract before her. Her hands trembled as she signed. 6 years of silence collapsed into that single moment. She thought of the lobby floors she once polished, the ridicule she endured, and the phone call Evelyn had interrupted. None of it defined her now. On her first official day, she walked through the lobby not with a mop and bucket, but with files and confidence. Guests glanced at her badge, some nodding politely, unaware of the battles fought to earn it. She paused by the chandelier she once polished, its crystals scattering light like 1,000 promises. For the first time, she allowed herself to smile freely. At night, she opened her journal and began writing. She described the years of rejection, the turning point with Victor, the victories and fears. But she also wrote a question to herself. What about others still unseen? She resolved to create a program within the hotel chain to mentor overlooked employees, especially those with hidden talents buried under bias. Within weeks, applications poured in. Housekeepers who spoke Arabic, receptionists fluent in Portuguese, cooks who understood Russian, all waiting for recognition. Victor watched the initiative grow, his pride evident. "You've built more than a department," he told her. "You've built a legacy." And so the Crescent Moon Hotel, once just another landmark beneath moss-draped oaks, became a symbol of transformation. Amara's story spread beyond Savannah, a reminder that talent cannot be erased by prejudice, nor brilliance silenced by dismissal. She carried the memories of struggle, but no longer bowed beneath them. Instead, she rose, each step echoing resilience. Have you ever felt overlooked despite your talents? Share your story below, and let's inspire change together. Victor revealed he'd overheard Amara's Dutch call. Impressed by her fluency, "We're hosting a Dutch-Chinese trade summit tomorrow," he said. "I need someone who speaks both languages flawlessly." Amara, expecting another cleaning assignment, was stunned when he offered her the role of International Relations Coordinator. $5,000 a week. Her knees nearly buckled. In the HR office, analyst Leela Brooks, a recent hire, confided, "I saw your file and wondered why you were in housekeeping." Reed blocked my inquiries. Amara's new badge granted access to systems she'd never touched. As she passed Evelyn, the manager's shock was palpable. "What are you doing here, Thompson?" Amara replied coolly, "International relations per Mr. Langston." Preparing for the summit, Amara found errors in Mandarin translations, offensive terms that could derail negotiations. She corrected them swiftly, earning Victor's nod. Reed swore he hired top translators, he muttered. Amara's findings pointed to Reed's cousin, an unqualified translator charging exorbitant rates. At the summit, Amara shone, navigating Dutch and Mandarin with ease, forging connections that stunned executives. Reed approached, his smile forced. "Impressive, Thompson. Evelyn misjudged you." Amara's calm reply, "My Mandarin fluency was in my resume. Ignored for 6 years, left him speechless." Leela later showed Amara records of Reed's cousin's contracts, riddled with errors costing millions. "When have you seen talent ignored for favoritism?" Comment below to spark a conversation. The board demanded a report, so Victor asked Amara to prepare a briefing that afternoon. She gathered emails, invoices, draft agreements, and translation logs, arranging evidence into a clear narrative. Leela cross-checked purchase orders against vendor lists, highlighting suspicious entries tied to Reed's cousin. By noon, the pattern was undeniable. Inflated fees masked by technical jargon, recycled paragraphs lifted from public glossaries, and gross cultural misinterpretations appeared in every file. Amara summarized the risks, noting potential damage to relationships with Dutch consulates and Chinese chambers. Victor listened, jaw tight. "Present this to the executive committee at 4, he said. She nodded, steadying her breath, feeling a new authority settle over the room like a mantle she had earned. At 4, the committee assembled. Screens glowed, papers rustled, murmurs hushed. Amara stood at the head of the table, introduced by Victor without flourish. She spoke in precise English, then switched to Dutch to demonstrate nuance, then to Mandarin to show tonal clarity, mapping each change in register to the intended audience. She displayed the mistranslations that would have insulted delegates, explaining connotations with calm expertise. Directors frowned, then turned toward Reed, whose mask slipped. Victor cut through the tension. "We pay for excellence, not nepotism," he said. Amara concluded with recommendations. Hire vetted linguists, implement peer reviews, audit vendor ties, and create an internal language resource led by staff with proven skills. The vote was unanimous. Contracts were suspended pending a full investigation. Reed avoided eye contact, muttered about delays, and left early. After the meeting, Amara returned to her desk, where a thank you note waited, unsigned. It read simply, "You saved us from humiliation." She tucked it into her planner, unsure whether gratitude came from an ally or a skeptic. That evening, while many celebrated, she stayed to refine welcome materials for the next day's sessions. Every name, honorific, dietary preference, and seating label had to be perfect. Lila joined her, bringing tea. "You changed the tide," she said. Amara smiled softly. "We changed it." Morning spilled gold across the river as delegations arrived. Security scanned badges, bell staff rolled carts, and chefs prepared regional breakfasts designed by a culinary team that had finally received accurate translations. Amara floated through the lobby, greeting guests in their languages, smoothing logistics with unobtrusive grace. Victor observed from a mezzanine rail, expression unreadable, as if measuring outcomes against a long private ledger. The opening panel began with cautious energy. Amara moderated side conversations, catching idioms that might derail clarity, replacing them with diplomatic phrasing. Executives who once overlooked her now deferred to her judgment. Evelyn lingered near the service doors, chastened, saying little. At lunch, a rumor spread that Reed had called a vendor, threatening litigation over canceled contracts. Victor instructed legal to document everything. Amara focused on outcomes, guiding a breakout discussion about green hospitality standards across borders. A Dutch entrepreneur praised the hotel's attention to linguistic respect. A Shanghai logistics director asked whether the chain planned internships for multilingual graduates. Amara answered yes, surprising herself, then wrote the idea into her notes. In the afternoon, the final negotiation stalled over a clause about data responsibilities for booking integrations. Technical jargon in both languages risked confusion. Amara requested a brief recess, drafted a bilingual appendix defining terms in clear aligned wording, and returned with printouts. Parties scanned the pages, relief washing across faces. Pens moved, agreements advanced. Victor gave a single quiet nod. After the closing reception, Reed cornered Amara near the elevators. His smile tried to pass as sincere. "Impressive day," he said, then lowered his voice. "Careful with accusations. Loyalty matters." She held his gaze. "Integrity matters." Doors slid open. She stepped inside, refusing to shrink. That night, Amara walked along the riverfront, letting the humid breeze carry away adrenaline. Street musicians played low, mournful notes. She thought of the years spent polishing chandeliers while ideas burned inside her. Now those ideas finally had oxygen. Her phone vibrated. A message from Victor. Excellent work. Meet me at 8 tomorrow. Sleep came easily for the first time in weeks. Morning brought a new challenge. Victor outlined plans to create an international relations office across the chain. With Amara leading standards, we need protocols, training and measurable safeguards, he said. Build a framework that outlives us. She mapped modules covering ethics, translation accuracy, cultural briefings, and vendor independence. Lila proposed analytics to track errors and savings. Together, they drafted a pilot timeline. By midday, Victor convened regional managers for feedback. Questions surfaced about costs, staffing, and timelines. Amara answered methodically, citing cases where precision prevented losses. She never raised her voice. Authority lived in knowledge, not volume. During a break, Evelyn approached with uncharacteristic humility. I was wrong, she said, voice barely above a whisper. I let bias steer me. If you can use housekeeping insights for training, I'll help. Amara considered, then nodded. Bring your best practices. People deserve fair paths. In the afternoon, evidence against Reed deepened. Procurement logs revealed kickbacks routed through shell entities. Finance prepared a report for outside counsel. Victor placed Reed on leave pending results. Whispers swirled, yet operations held steady because teams had clarity. Amara focused on the summit's final document, ensuring commitments matched translations exactly. She read every line 3 times, resisting fatigue. By dusk, signatories gathered for the ceremonial photograph. Flashbulbs sparked, applause filled the hall. Later, in the quiet after guests departed, Victor stood with Amara under the chandelier. Do you realize what you built in 2 days? He asked. Not alone, she answered. Never alone, he agreed. He handed her a folder containing a provisional promotion letter and a compensation plan honoring the responsibilities she had assumed. Her breath caught, though composure stayed. She thanked him, promising to deliver outcomes worthy of the trust. On her way out, she met Lila at the staff entrance. They laughed at nothing and everything. Relieved, the hotel felt different, as if the walls remembered the truth finally spoken inside them. Reporters requested interviews about cross-cultural hospitality and linguistic ethics. Victor directed inquiries to the communications team, but asked Amara to prepare talking points. She wrote concisely about respect, accountability, and systems that make excellence ordinary. A journalist asked whether a single employee could change an institution. She replied that change accelerates when leaders listen. In the break room, a bell attendant shyly told her he spoke Indonesian and Spanish and wanted to learn Dutch. She encouraged him, adding scholarship ideas to her outline. Later, an engineer revealed proficiency in Italian acquired while working on cruise ships. Talents surfaced everywhere once people felt seen. Amara drafted an internal survey to catalog languages, inviting staff to volunteer their skills. Participation soared. Departments that once functioned in silos began collaborating. Training sessions launched. A pilot translation review saved significant costs within a week, preventing errors from reaching partners. Victor presented early metrics to the board, crediting the team. Reed, meanwhile, tried to rally allies, but documents undermined his claims. Council scheduled interviews. Amara refused to gloat. She concentrated on building reliable structures so success would not depend on heroics. During a late meeting, a senior manager apologized for earlier dismissiveness. I judged your role, not your capability, she admitted. Amara accepted the apology, then asked for support championing fair hiring practices. They shook hands. Toward evening, a librarian from a local university visited to discuss internships. Amara laid out a program for students studying linguistics, hospitality, and ethics. Partnerships formed quickly because the plan had clarity. Her calendar filled, yet she guarded small moments for deep work, believing precision underpins trust. One night, as storms gathered over the river, the power flickered. Backup systems took over flawlessly. In the half-light, Amara reviewed a final checklist for the summit's legacy packet, ensuring bilingual glossaries matched usage notes. She added a foreword thanking unnamed staff who kept faith when recognition seemed impossible. She closed her laptop, listening to raindrum's steady patterns against the windows, feeling both grounded and ascendant. Before heading home, she walked the quiet corridor where she once pushed a supply cart. She ran a hand along the wall, not from nostalgia, but as a pledge to keep pathways open. Outside, the air smelled of wet oak and distant ocean. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Lila read, "We did good work." Amara replied, "We're just beginning." Across town, families ate late dinners, students studied, and musicians packed up. The city carried on, unaware of every thread that had been rewoven inside the hotel. Yet the effects would ripple outward, touching travelers, partners, and employees who would never know her name only that things felt easier, clearer, kinder. Amara headed home beneath streetlights, steady steps marking the end of one chapter and the living start of another. Onward. On day 3, a Dutch executive recognized Amara from her linguistics article in a global journal. "Your work is cited everywhere," he exclaimed, drawing a crowd. Reed's discomfort grew as Victor observed. Amara uncovered more. Reed's cousin's translations were not just flawed but deliberately subpar, tied to a pattern of rejecting qualified non-white candidates. On day 4, Amara saw Reed escorting his cousin, carrying a final contract with the same errors. She rushed to Victor, showing proof of inflated payments and systemic bias. Lecho burst in with HR data, 5 years of rejected minority applicants, all highly skilled. Victor's face hardened. When Reed entered, claiming Amara messed up translations, Victor confronted him. "Payments to your cousin, $50,000 for garbage work, while Amara was ignored?" Reed stammered, exposed. Amara presented an email proving the cousin's fake certification. "You're nobody." Reed spat. "PhD, 6 publications," Amara countered. Victor demanded Reed's resignation. "Have you faced unfair barriers at work? Share below, and let's demand accountability." Reed's jaw tightened, rage flickering behind a brittle smile as legal counsel and finance leads filed into the boardroom. Victor remained standing, one hand resting on the back of a chair, while Amara laid out time-stamped invoices, procurement approvals, and comparative drafts that exposed repeated, conspicuous mistranslations. Lila connected her laptop to the display and projected a dashboard summarizing candidate pools, showing how qualified polyglot applicants had been screened out on pretexts unrelated to role requirements. Silence chilled the room. Then murmurs swelled as department heads recognized their own signatures beneath rubber-stamped justifications. Amara did not raise her voice. Her clarity was louder than accusation. She mapped each derogatory phrasing to likely diplomatic repercussions, quantifying risk, grounding outrage in fact. Victor asked the general counsel for immediate preservation orders across email, chat, and document repositories. Reed blurted that he had acted under pressure to deliver quickly, that no one had complained when deals closed. Amara clicked to a slide displaying edits she had made before the summit. Highlighted in calm blues, every correction prevented insult. Every tone shift replaced provocation with respect. The CFO spoke next, pointing to lost projections tied to reputational harm already underway in industry circles. Victor's voice stayed even. "We uphold standards or we sell our credibility for pennies." Reed turned toward Amara again, searching for an opening. "You're new to the front office," he said. "You don't understand how speed works." She held his stare. Speed without integrity is self-sabotage. Counsel requested a brief recess to finalize steps, then returned with printed instructions, authorizing an independent audit, suspending vendor access, and revoking Reed's administrative privileges pending the outcome. Security badges updated in real time. Reed's phone vibrated with alerts he could not silence. Outside, clouds piled over the river, heavy with late summer thunder, as though the sky too braced for a break. Word traveled fast. Floor supervisors stopped whispering and began speaking plainly. Housekeepers described mandatory overtime assigned after raising concerns. Kitchen staff recounted a vendor who replaced quality goods with cheaper substitutes while invoices rose. Each account added weight to the table, already bending under documents. Meanwhile, delegates from the trade summit continued private tours, unaware of the pressure chamber upstairs. Amara guided the last translator debrief, thanked the linguists who had delivered excellence, and returned to the boardroom carrying a folder of testimonials from clients praising the hotel's new precision. Victor motioned for her to begin again, this time for directors joining by video. She switched between English, Dutch, and Mandarin, presenting the same facts 3 ways, ensuring nothing was lost across audiences. Faces on screens shifted from skepticism to grim acknowledgement. Reed tried another tactic, suggesting that Amara had exceeded her authority, that her corrections had created delays leading to cost increases he had struggled to offset. Amara opened a spreadsheet Leela had compiled, correlating her interventions with accelerated sign-offs and higher satisfaction scores. Numbers undercut bluster. Then Leela, voice steady, revealed a folder of candidate notes. Applicants with master's degrees in community leadership had been rejected with boilerplate lines, each flagged by a code Reed used to justify bypassing final reviews. Victor's jaw clenched. "You didn't just fail to hire excellence," he said. "You engineered its exclusion." Security entered quietly, not to remove Reed yet, but to witness the chain of custody for devices. Reed laughed without mirth. "You'll cripple operations," he warned. "You'll lose institutional memory." Victor nodded toward Amara. "We're building institutional integrity." A thunderclap rattled the glass. The hotel lights flickered, steadied, then brightened, as if the building had decided to keep watching. PR pinged Victor's phone, asking for guidance. He drafted a brief statement centered on values, responsibility, and remedial action, crediting internal teams for vigilance. Amara recommended adding a commitment to transparent vendor selection with multilingual oversight. He added the line exactly as she phrased it. When the message was published, employees across properties replied with cautious relief. The tone signaled change more convincingly than slogans ever had. By late afternoon, the independent auditors arrived. 2 sat beside finance, 2 shadowed IT, and 1 requested Amara's entire translation archive, praising the meticulous version history. She handed over backups, index pages, contextual notes, and contact lists for third-party reviewers willing to attest to quality. Reed slumped in a corner seat, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Then his cousin texted him, the screen lit with an unhelpful confession about needing a little more time to tweak the cert template. Lila, monitoring the collection process, captured the notification on the mirrored compliance screen. No one spoke for a long time. Victor ended the quiet. "We're done here," he said. "Return your badge, surrender your laptop. Wait in conference room 3 while counsel finalizes your exit." Reed shoved his chair back, but security, calm and courteous, directed him toward the door. Amara exhaled slowly, channeling adrenaline into focus. She still had partners to brief, teammates to encourage, and a staff forum to lead. Clara from HR requested language for a company-wide memo that would acknowledge harm, outline next steps, and invite qualified candidates previously screened out to reapply through an expedited fair process. Amara drafted paragraphs that balanced candor with resolve, refusing euphemism, refusing blame shifting. Victor approved without edits. Evening settled like ink as rain began, pattering across the moss and brick. Amara remained at her desk, gathering fragments into structure. Training outlines, mentorship rosters, vendor evaluations, community partnerships, and scholarships for multilingual staff seeking certifications from recognized bodies. Leela slid a folder across the desk, letters from former applicants thanking the hotel for reopening doors. Some wrote from nearby towns, others from abroad. Every sentence carried both loss and possibility. Amara answered each before leaving. Downstairs, she passed the chandelier she once polished, and the memory no longer stung. It steadied. In the lobby, a delegation lingered. Trading cards, promising visits, asking for recommendations. One executive said her granddaughter had shared Amara's old lecture online and wanted to study linguistics. Amara felt gratitude rise, vast and quiet. The storm moved offshore overnight. Morning broke bright with sunlight sparkling across the river like scattered glass. Breakfast service hummed. Staff moved with unforced coordination born of trust. Victor convened leadership for a final session to close the summit and chart internal reforms. Amara opened with a concise timeline. Identification, verification, escalation, action. She described new checks that would prevent gatekeeping, including multilingual hiring panels, vendor rotation requirements, public scorecards for translation accuracy, and a whistleblower channel staffed by independent monitors. Directors asked about scalability. Amara explained documentation templates, peer review cycles, recorded briefings, and cross-property exchanges that would normalize excellence. She framed each measure not as punishment but as infrastructure for fairness. Applause rose, not loud, not performative, but sincere. Then the Dutch executive who had recognized her on day 3 requested the floor. He recounted how Amara's article had guided his team through a contested contract in Rotterdam, preventing a breakdown that might have cost hundreds of jobs. He thanked her for the scholarship combined with practice. The Shanghai logistics director echoed him, adding that Amara's steady moderation had changed his view of hospitality from ceremonial to strategic. Victor, listening, seemed almost relieved, as if a private wager on what courage could build had finally paid out. Clara announced a restitution plan for candidates wrongly passed over, including personalized outreach, interview coaching, travel stipends, and accelerated consideration for roles matching their expertise. Lila added that the data team would publish anonymized metrics quarterly to ensure accountability. Amara promised office hours for staff wanting language learning paths, inviting them to bring stories, not just resumes. She wanted the organization to remember that behind every credential lived commitment shaped by years of unseen effort. Near midday, council returned with finalized documents, termination for cause, vendor debarment, referral to authorities for fraud, and a compliance roadmap integrating Amara's recommendations. Victor signed, placed the pen gently on the folder, and asked facilities to restore Reed's office to standard configuration for the next occupant. No theatrics, just closure. After lunch, PR invited Amara to join a press call. She accepted on the condition that the conversation elevates systems, not personalities. She spoke about dignity as operational policy, about translation as ethical engineering, about how hospitality becomes rigorous when language is treated as architecture, not ornament. Reporters asked whether this reckoning had damaged the brand. She said it had revealed its backbone. Messages poured in afterward. Thank yous from interns, notes from longtime guests, queries from partners wanting guidance. She replied as time allowed, then drafted a public toolkit summarizing what the hotel had learned. releasing it freely. Copies traveled quickly through professional networks. Late afternoon, staff gathered in the ballroom for a debrief. Victor stood beside Amara, but let her lead. She thanked housekeeping, banquets, bell service, engineering, security, finance, HR, IT, PR, and culinary for enduring storms with grace. She named people whose quiet precision had held the building together when leadership faltered. Then she asked everyone to take a breath and think of a colleague whose abilities they might have overlooked. In that suspended moment, the room felt like a promise renewed. Applause again, warmer now. Afterward, Evelyn approached, contrite. "I apologized once," she said, "but I want to do more. Let me help build training for supervisors so mistakes like mine don't recur." Amara agreed, assigning her to a pilot cohort under Leela's guidance, with clear benchmarks and external review. Accountability meant structure, not humiliation. As twilight spread, the final contracts from the summit arrived signed, with handwritten notes praising the clarity of the bilingual appendices. Victor read them, then turned to Amara with a rare smile that reached his eyes. "You insisted on standards," he said. "Now look at what those standards returned." She nodded, neither triumphant nor timid, simply steady. Work remained, always. Yet the arc had bent decisively toward fairness because people chose courage over comfort. On her way out, Amara opened her journal and wrote 3 lines: "Truth withstands scrutiny. Talent thrives with access. Dignity scales." She closed the cover and, before leaving the quiet corridor, looked once more at the chandelier. It did not symbolize drudgery anymore. It mirrored resolve. Outside, the evening air smelled of rain, rinsed clean. She walked toward the river path, phone buzzing softly with messages from applicants who finally had interviews scheduled. She answered one more, then slipped the device into her pocket and let the city's music carry her forward. Have you faced unfair barriers at work? Share below and let's demand accountability. ChatGPT said, in an emergency board meeting, Victor revealed the scheme. Charts showed rejected talent, overpriced contracts, and racial bias. Amara saved us from a diplomatic disaster, he said. As Chinese executives nodded, Reed was fired, Evelyn suspended. Amara was named Global Director of Internal Communications, overseeing multilingual operations. The room erupted in applause, especially from housekeeping staff, tears in their eyes. As Reed was escorted out, he muttered, "You won't last." Amara's recorded evidence of his threats ensured his downfall. That night, in her new office overlooking Savannah's riverfront, Amara called her mother, who'd worked as a maid despite her degree. "I did it, Mom," she whispered, tears falling. "What's your dream worth fighting for? Comment below and inspire others." The applause in the boardroom had not been perfunctory. It carried relief, vindication, and a surge of hope. For years, silence and fear had strangled talent, but now the truth had found daylight. Amara stood still as colleagues approached one by one. A receptionist who whispered, "I speak Arabic, I'd love to help." A bellman who said, "My grandmother was a translator in the army." A sous chef who revealed he knew Portuguese and had never dared mention it. They all looked at her, not with envy but with recognition, as though her victory had unlocked doors for everyone. Victor closed the meeting with calm authority. This organization cannot survive without integrity. Every overlooked voice, every dismissed talent, every biased choice has cost us dearly. That ends here. He gestured to Amara. She will build a framework to make sure excellence is the rule, not the exception. Applause rose again, echoing against the high glass walls. Reed's chair sat empty, a quiet reminder of what unchecked favoritism destroys. Evelyn's absence, too, left a shadow, one of regret and consequence. Later in her office, Amara sat by the window, the river glittering with city lights, barges drifting under bridges like patient giants. She thought of her mother's weary hands scrubbing hotel bathrooms, of the dismissal in Evelyn's eyes, of every application ignored. All of it led here. When her mother answered the call, Amara's voice trembled. "I did it, Mom. They finally saw me." Her mother's silence broke with soft sobs. "You were always meant for more. You fought for both of us." The following week, Amara's new role began. She reviewed stacks of proposals, multilingual onboarding, cultural orientation, translation audits, and scholarship partnerships. She created policies requiring every executive to attend language respect training. No one could plead ignorance anymore. She called Lila into her office. "We need data transparency," Amara said. Lila nodded eagerly. "Quarterly reports, anonymized metrics, public dashboards will show progress, not promises." Housekeeping staff requested a meeting. Nervous at first, they entered her office in pairs, clutching notebooks. One woman said she knew Haitian Creole, another Spanish, another Tagalog. Amara smiled. "These are not side skills. They are assets. You deserve recognition." She outlined mentorships where employees could teach each other, building bridges between departments. Their faces brightened, tears welling as they realized their voices finally mattered. Victor visited unannounced. "How's the new director holding up?" he asked, eyes sharp but kind. Amara replied with measured confidence. "It's heavy work, but necessary." He leaned against the window, watching the river. Remember, this isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. Institutions resist change. Don't let that discourage you. She nodded, absorbing the weight of the legacy he was entrusting to her. Months passed, and reforms took root. A new recruitment program sought multilingual graduates across disciplines. Partnerships with universities flourished. Delegations returned, impressed not only by the hotel's luxury but by the respect woven into every interaction. Staff morale soared. Guests noticed, profits followed. The Crescent Moon Hotel became a case study in ethical transformation, cited in conferences, articles in boardrooms worldwide. Evelyn, suspended, wrote Amara a letter, handwritten, shaky, full of remorse. She admitted her prejudice, confessed jealousy of Amara's degree, and begged forgiveness. Amara read it slowly, setting it aside. Forgiveness would come perhaps, but only after proof of change. Accountability mattered more than apologies. She forwarded the letter to HR for review, ensuring process over sentiment. Reed disgraced, attempted legal threats, but Amara's meticulous evidence shielded the company. His cousin's fraudulent certificates were revoked, his contracts dissolved. Trade journals chronicled his fall. For Amara, it was never about vengeance. It was about clearing the path for those who deserved to walk it. At the year's end, Amara hosted the hotel's first Voices of the Staff Forum. Employees spoke about their skills, cultures, and ideas. A dishwasher recited poetry in Spanish and English. A concierge played violin between translations. A security guard told stories in Swahili, captivating the audience. Applause thundered as the walls of silence collapsed for good. Amara stood at the podium, voice steady. This is who we are, an orchestra of languages, stories, and strengths, no longer hidden. Her mother attended that evening, sitting in the front row, pride shining through tears. Afterward, she embraced Amara tightly. "You've rewritten our story," she whispered. Amara held her close, realizing the victory was shared across generations. The next morning, Amara walked the familiar path past the chandelier in the lobby. Its crystals sparkled as they always had, but now she saw her reflection differently. Not as a maid polishing surfaces, but as a leader shaping futures. She paused, touching the railing, and whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." Letters poured in from around the world. Students inspired, professionals emboldened, parents encouraging their children to keep learning despite obstacles. Amara answered as many as she could, writing late into the night. She ended each reply with the same message: "Your dream matters, don't let anyone dismiss it." Victor convened the board months later to review progress. Charts now displayed rising retention, diverse hiring, improved profits, and glowing feedback from partners. He turned to Amara. "This was your vision." She corrected him gently. "It was ours. I just opened the door." By then, she had expanded her office into a small department, staffed with analysts, translators, and cultural advisors. The once overlooked staff now taught language courses in-house, and cross-training became part of promotion pathways. Bias audits were routine. Transparency was a culture. Standing by the river one evening, Amara reflected on the journey. She remembered humiliation, anger, and nights of despair. Yet every struggle had carved resilience. She realized success was not just about proving herself, but about dismantling the barriers that held others down. The city lights shimmered. Boats glided slowly. Her phone buzzed with a message from Lila. "We hit our first milestone. Over 50 staff members promoted through the new program." Amara smiled, tears in her eyes. She typed back, "This is what fighting for dreams looks like." And somewhere deep inside, she knew the question she once posed to herself would continue echoing outward. What's your dream worth fighting for? Share below and inspire others. 6 months later, Amara's office on the 32nd floor bore a plaque. Dr. Amara Thompson, Vice President of Diversity and International Relations. Her Invisible Talents program identified 147 overlooked employees, 80% minorities, now in roles matching their skills. Translation costs dropped 78%, and client satisfaction soared 42%. Evelyn, demoted to laundry in a small Georgia hotel, watched Amara's conference broadcast humiliated. Reed, unemployable in luxury hotels, lived in the shadow of lawsuits and investigations that followed his exposure. The Crescent Moon Hotel was now the case study for business schools, the benchmark for global corporations, the proof that ethics and profit could align. Amara adjusted easily to her new role, but the memory of mops and buckets never left her. Each morning, she walked past the chandelier that once reflected her invisibility, reminding herself never to forget where she began. The staff who had once whispered now greeted her openly. She held open hours every Thursday when any employee could walk in without an appointment. A janitor came with notes on eco-friendly cleaning solutions. A cook suggested culturally tailored menus for international guests, and a receptionist shared an idea for multilingual booking systems. Amara listened, documented, and acted. Within months, these small ideas produced measurable savings and customer loyalty. Her office became a hub not of hierarchy but of collaboration. Analysts compiled metrics showing reduced turnover, faster onboarding, and increased engagement. Universities requested guest lectures. Amara stood before students telling her story without bitterness. Talent without opportunity is like language without an audience, she said. The room would fall silent, and then applause erupted. Victor remained close, guiding from a distance, his eyes proud but careful. He often reminded her that leadership was not a destination but a practice. Together they attended global forums. Amara spoke in Dutch to European delegates, Mandarin to Chinese investors, and Spanish to Latin American entrepreneurs. She demonstrated that respect was not cosmetic but structural. Meanwhile, Evelyn worked in obscurity, folding sheets in a forgotten property. She turned on the television one evening to see Amara speaking at the United Nations on workplace equity. The applause echoed through the broadcast, and Evelyn felt the sting of what prejudice had cost her. She told herself she had been unfair, but regret could not erase her choices. Reed, in contrast, appeared in tabloids for failed ventures, trying to reinvent himself, but every article referenced his scandal. His name became synonymous with nepotism and collapse. Amara built something enduring. The Invisible Talents program expanded to 5 countries. A Kenyan porter fluent in French became a regional trainer. A Brazilian receptionist with coding skills helped design an internal app for translation verification. A Filipino chef created menus praised by embassies for authenticity. Every success fed the cycle. Staff felt seen, guests felt valued, investors saw profit. One day, Amara received a letter from her old professor at Georgetown. "You've proven what I taught in theory. Language is power." She smiled, folding the letter carefully. Another envelope arrived from her mother, a photograph of her graduating niece holding a diploma. "You lit the way," the note read. In the hotel lobby, plaques now displayed staff achievements. Visitors paused, reading about housekeepers turned managers, bellmen turned translators, servers turned liaisons. Guests said it made them trust the hotel more, knowing it honored its people. Competitors scrambled to imitate but lacked the sincerity. Amara's system was not just policy, it was culture. Her team faced challenges too. Old biases resurfaced in subtle forms. Some managers resisted change, masking it under concerns of cost or tradition. Amara confronted them firmly, armed with data and examples. "The cost of bias is always higher than the cost of fairness," she said in boardrooms. Over time, resistance softened, as numbers proved her right. She also invested in education. Scholarships funded by the hotel chain supported employees pursuing degrees. Classes in language, business, and technology filled conference rooms at night. Housekeepers studied grammar after shifts. Bartenders practiced coding, and doormen learned Spanish. Laughter and ambition filled halls once marked by silence. The media called Amara a pioneer. Magazines featured her story, headlines praising her as the woman who made diversity profitable. She handled interviews gracefully, redirecting focus to her team. "I am not the story," she told journalists. "The people whose talents were ignored, they are." One afternoon, Amara visited the laundry room of a sister property. Watching staff work in heat and steam, she knelt beside a woman folding sheets and asked about her life. The woman, stunned, said she had studied political science in Mexico. Amara invited her to join the program. Months later, that same woman spoke at a regional summit, introducing policy recommendations in flawless Spanish and English. The ripple grew. Governments consulted Amara on workplace equality. NGOs invited her to keynote conferences. Students quoted her articles. Families wrote letters thanking her for showing their children that barriers could fall. Despite accolades, she remained grounded. On quiet nights, she returned to the riverfront, watching barges drift like steady giants. She wrote in her journal, "Power is not in the title but in the door you open for others." Victor eventually announced his retirement. At the farewell gala, he raised a toast. "When I met Amara, she was invisible to those around her, but never to herself. She believed enough to endure. Now she makes others visible." The ballroom erupted in applause. Amara stood, her mother at her side, humbled but strong. The next morning, she entered her office, sunlight blazing across the plaque on her door. She smiled, not for herself alone, but for every overlooked dream, now standing in light. She whispered to her reflection in the glass, "This is only the rising action." The story continues. Have you ever seen a hidden talent finally shine? Share your story below so others find the courage to rise. Amara's program expanded with mentorship, ensuring talent is nurtured. A Dutch professor offered her a visiting professorship. Noting her rise, Amara launched a scholarship for employees' children, funding a colleague's daughter's dream. The impact rippled across the chain. Staff walked taller, voices grew stronger, and customers noticed the difference in every interaction. Lobby smiles were no longer forced, they reflected pride. Board members who once hesitated now boasted of diversity metrics as a competitive advantage. Yet Amara refused to let success turn complacent. "Numbers matter," she told her team, "but stories matter more. We're here to build futures, not just charts." Mentorship became the heartbeat of the Invisible Talents program. Each employee promoted through it was paired with someone still hidden, forming ladders of growth. A housekeeper coached another in interview skills. A line cook tutored a busser in English, and a concierge taught computer basics to a porter. Soon success stories multiplied. Clients remarked that the hotel felt alive, not like an institution but a community. Invitations poured in. The Dutch professor who had cited her articles sent a formal letter offering a visiting professorship at Leiden University. "You've bridged scholarship and practice," he wrote. "Our students must learn from you." Amara accepted part-time, commuting virtually, lecturing on equity and corporate linguistics. Students sent her reflections, some saying they saw themselves for the first time in a curriculum. The scholarship she launched for employees' children quickly became one of her proudest initiatives. The first recipient, Rosa, daughter of a longtime server, received funding to study biomedical engineering. At the award ceremony, Rosa wept in her father's arms, whispering that she finally had a chance. Staff crowded the ballroom, applauding until their hands ached. Amara stood quietly at the back, tears in her eyes, realizing she was witnessing generational change. Still, challenges emerged. Some investors questioned the costs of scholarships and mentorship, pressing Victor, who had stepped back but still advised. Amara presented data, retention soared, turnover plummeted, and litigation risks nearly vanished. She added stories, letters from employees, guest reviews praising authentic connections, and testimonials from families. The room fell silent. One investor finally said, "This isn't charity, this is sustainability." The vote passed unanimously. Outside the numbers, Amara never lost touch with the human side. She visited departments unannounced, checking on night shift workers, bringing tea, and asking questions. She discovered a dishwasher fluent in Japanese, who later assisted with a Tokyo delegation, saving the company from costly misunderstandings. Another time, she found a maintenance worker who composed music. She arranged for him to play at a gala, where guests asked for recordings. Hidden brilliance surfaced everywhere once people felt seen. International recognition followed. Business journals profiled her. Governments invited her to policy panels, and universities asked for case studies. Yet she deflected praise, always crediting teams. "A leader doesn't create talent," she said during one interview. "A leader clears obstacles so talent can breathe." Her words spread widely, quoted in articles and classrooms. Meanwhile, Reed, disgraced, attempted small consulting gigs but failed. His name was tied to a scandal, and no serious firm trusted him. Evelyn, still in the laundry, avoided cameras, ashamed of the choices that left her isolated. Amara never gloated. She considered them lessons carved into history, reminders of what bias destroys. Victor, watching from retirement, sent occasional notes. One read, "Pride is dangerous, but you've turned it into purpose. Keep walking steady." She kept the note pinned in her office, glancing at it whenever doubt crept in. At the 6-month mark, the scholarship fund doubled, thanks to contributions from grateful clients. Rosa wrote her first report from university, thanking Amara directly. "You gave me more than money. You gave me belief," she said. Amara replied, "Belief was always yours. We only cleared the fog." A year into her role, Amara addressed a global summit. She stood before thousands, projected on screens across continents. Her speech wove statistics with stories, theory with lived experience. She switched languages effortlessly, honoring each audience. The crowd rose in a standing ovation, not for spectacle but for truth. Reporters later wrote, "She made diversity feel inevitable, not optional." Back home, Amara returned to simple rituals. She still polished her own desk, brewed her own coffee, and walked the lobby. Staff joked that she knew every corner better than housekeeping. She wanted to remember the feel of the mop handle, the sting of dismissal, the weight of invisibility. Those memories fueled her determination never to let others endure the same. Mentorship circles multiplied. A former janitor became head of sustainability, leading green initiatives praised in environmental reports. A receptionist turned analyst discovered new revenue streams through cultural partnerships. A server became a community liaison, building bridges with local schools. Each story added proof that opportunity transforms not just individuals but entire ecosystems. Amara also focused on resilience. "Success invites scrutiny," she warned her team, "expect resistance." When critics accused the program of favoritism, she invited independent audits. The reports confirmed transparency and merit-based selection. Critics quieted. Integrity was the shield. Her professorship blossomed. Students from Leiden visited Savannah, touring the hotel, interviewing staff, and writing dissertations on workplace transformation. Amara sat with them in the cafe, answering questions patiently, insisting they talk to employees directly. "Theory must meet practice," she said. They returned home with stories, not just data. One evening, Amara hosted Rosa and her family in the hotel restaurant. As they dined, Rosa shared her first published paper. "You showed me possibility," she said. Amara raised a glass. "You showed yourself a possibility. I only pointed the light." Victor joined them briefly, smiling. "This is legacy," he said, clinking glasses. The river outside shimmered, reflecting the city lights. Amara excused herself, walking to the balcony. She inhaled the humid air, letting gratitude wash through her. She thought of her mother, her struggles, her sacrifices. She thought of every applicant ignored, every voice dismissed. Now those voices filled ballrooms, boardrooms, and classrooms. She whispered to herself, "This is the climax, but not the end. We are only beginning to write the resolution." Have you ever mentored someone whose hidden talent changed everything? Share your story below and let others see how legacy is built. The hotel industry felt ripples. Amara's reforms exposed bias, forcing competitors to act. Her mother's words echoed, "Your worth isn't their recognition." The Crescent Moon became a diversity leader, proving that talent reshapes systems. Other chains rushed to replicate the program, but none carried its authenticity. What Amara built was not a policy drafted in haste. It was a culture born of pain, vision, and persistence. She insisted that change had to be lived daily, not just written into manuals. Competitors soon realized that without belief, their numbers were empty. Within months, trade journals ran features praising the Crescent Moon as a model of equity. Conferences invited Amara as a keynote speaker. She walked onto stages in Paris, Singapore, Nairobi, and Toronto. Her voice calm yet commanding, recounting her journey from mops to boardrooms. Each story carried the weight of truth. Bias wastes brilliance, she told audiences. Opportunity multiplies it. Delegates scribbled notes, some wiping tears. Her message reached beyond hotels, sparking reforms in airlines, tech firms, banks, and even universities. Back in Savannah, her office became a beacon. Staff stopped by not just with ideas but with gratitude. A security guard thanked her for the scholarships that allowed his son to study architecture. A housekeeper shared pride that her daughter had joined an engineering program. A bellman revealed he had applied for culinary school with hotel sponsorship. Amara listened to each, her heart swelling at the knowledge that seeds planted years ago were now forests. Her mother visited the hotel for the first time since Amara's promotion. She stood in the gleaming lobby staring at the chandelier once scrubbed by her daughter. Guests passed, staff greeted warmly, and her mother whispered, "You carried us here." Amara embraced her tightly, tears falling against the silk of her mother's blouse. "You taught me worth," she said. They walked through corridors now echoing with empowerment rather than silence. Evelyn, far away in her demotion, read about the program's impact in industry reports. She felt regret carve lines deeper across her face. Reed, unemployed, drifted from city to city, his reputation shattered. Neither found redemption easily. Amara never mentioned them publicly. Her focus remained forward. Yet privately, she acknowledged their presence in her story as symbols of what must never be repeated. Expansion continued. The Invisible Talents Initiative spread into Latin America and Asia. Local managers identified bilingual farmers, musicians, teachers, and technicians among staff. Promotions followed. Guests noticed genuine hospitality, service infused with pride. Revenues climbed. Investors applauded not just ethics but results. Amara also pushed for broader commitments: maternity support, flexible scheduling, and cultural holiday recognition. Diversity without dignity is incomplete, she told the board. Policies shifted accordingly. Staff loyalty deepened. Strikes and disputes that plagued competitors never touched Crescent Moon. Employees felt ownership. She launched an annual conference, The Language of Equity, hosted in rotating cities. Scholars, business leaders, activists, and workers gathered. Panels explored translation, mentorship, systemic bias, and practical reform. Stories flowed: a janitor turned poet, a receptionist turned CEO, a bellwoman turned engineer. Each tale echoed the same truth. Talent thrives when seen. Media crowned Amara the conscience of hospitality. She shrugged off titles, focusing on building structures that outlived her. Leadership is temporary, she told Lila during a late-night planning session, but systems endure. Together they drafted 10-year roadmaps, embedding equity into training manuals, contracts, audits, and incentives. At night, Amara often returned to the riverfront balcony, notebook in hand. She wrote reflections, documenting victories and fears. One entry read, "The chandelier once mocked me. Now it mirrors resilience. May no one else feel invisible beneath its light." Another entry asked, "How do we keep fire burning once storms pass?" She resolved never to let routine dull vision. Victor, now retired, visited occasionally. Watching the thriving lobby, he remarked, "I hope for survival. You delivered transformation." Amara smiled, "You gave me the chance." He shook his head, "You seized it." Their conversations were short but rich, full of unspoken respect. Her professorship blossomed too. Students submitted research citing her model. Some traveled to Savannah, shadowing staff, writing dissertations on equitable hospitality. One told her, "You made me believe academia and practice can meet." Amara replied, "They must or both fail." The scholarship for employees' children grew exponentially. Hundreds of students entered universities. Their parents sent pictures, caps tossed at graduations, lab coats donned, instruments held, dreams alive. Each photograph lined a wall in Amara's office, a gallery of futures. She often paused to look at them before tough meetings, reminding herself why she fought bureaucracy daily. Challenges remained. Critics claimed the program slowed hiring with its meticulous reviews. Amara responded with data showing that higher retention saved money long-term. Some complained that celebrating diversity overshadowed tradition. She countered that tradition without growth becomes exclusion. Every challenge became an opportunity to sharpen clarity. 2 years after her appointment, the United Nations invited her to co-chair a global commission on workplace equity. She accepted, balancing responsibilities with humility. Addressing delegates, she spoke in 6 languages, weaving them seamlessly, embodying her belief that language is a bridge in power. The hall thundered with applause. Back at the Crescent Moon, employees watched the broadcast together in the ballroom. When the camera panned to Amara, they rose spontaneously, clapping, cheering, some crying. For them, she was not just a leader, but a symbol that unseen workers could ascend. Her mother watched from home, clutching the remote. She did it, she whispered to no one, tears rolling freely. Later, Amara returned to her office, weary but fulfilled. She opened her journal and wrote, "Recognition is fleeting, worth is permanent, build worth." She closed the book, gazed steady on the river, lights flickering on the water. As the hotel industry evolved, competitors adopted superficial versions of her program, but employees saw through pretenses. Crescent Moon remained trusted because it had lived its values through struggle. Guests chose it not just for luxury but for principle. A brand became a movement. At the next annual conference, Amara stood before thousands. She recalled her mother's words, "Your worth isn't their recognition." She repeated them aloud. The crowd hushed, then erupted in applause. "These words carried me," she said. "Now may they carry you." She outlined future goals, expanding scholarships, building translation cooperatives, and publishing open-source resources for global industries. "Equity grows when shared," she declared. Afterward, a young employee approached timidly. "I used to clean rooms," she said. "Now I'm studying finance because of the scholarship. Someday I want your job." Amara smiled. "And someday you should have it. That's the point." The evening ended with music, laughter, and stories exchanged in many languages. Amara stood among her people, not above them, knowing the journey was collective. As she walked home that night, stars glittered above the moss-draped oaks. The city hummed with life. She paused by the river, whispered a silent thank you to her mother, to Victor, to every overlooked dream that fueled her fire. Then she breathed deeply, ready for tomorrow's battles. The chandelier would still shine, the hotel would still stand, and Amara would still fight, not for recognition but for worth, dignity, and futures yet unseen. Have you ever witnessed a system change because one person dared to challenge it? Share below and remind others that courage can ripple through the world. Amara's call in Dutch sparked a revolution. Her story shows prejudice hides talent, but truth prevails. Share how you've overcome barriers below. Subscribe for more stories of triumph, and let's ensure no talent stays invisible. The most significant change begins with one voice. Will yours be next? Her voice had carried across languages, across borders, across hearts, weary of being dismissed. That moment, answering a simple call, speaking with confidence born of years of unseen labor, became the catalyst. What seemed ordinary proved extraordinary once the world stopped ignoring it. That is the essence of every barrier broken, a person already prepared, waiting only for the door to open. Amara's journey is proof that silence imposed by others cannot smother brilliance forever. The chandelier she once polished now mirrors her leadership. The same floor she scrubbed on her knees became the ground where executives applauded her vision. Every slight, every rejection, every whispered doubt turned into fuel. She did not rise despite prejudice. She grew because she refused to let prejudice dictate her worth. So what about you? Perhaps you've been overlooked in a meeting, your ideas claimed by others. Possibly your accent led someone to dismiss your intelligence. Possibly your application was ignored because of your name, your background, or your origin. These are not small slights, they are weights placed deliberately on shoulders that already carry enough. Yet you stand, you endure. And maybe like Amara, you are one opportunity away from shifting everything. When talent is hidden, companies lose more than contracts. They lose trust, innovation, and growth. Bias bleeds profit as surely as it bleeds dignity. Amara's discovery of Reed's fraud was not just about corruption, it was about how prejudice cost millions while silencing the very people who could save organizations. Her program turned cleaners into managers, cooks into innovators, and receptionists into translators. Numbers soared, but more importantly, people breathed freely. Think of the security guard who studied at night, finally promoted because someone believed. Think of the dishwasher, fluent in Japanese, whose skill prevented disaster during a Tokyo delegation. Think of Rosa, the server's daughter, now studying biomedical engineering because a scholarship saw her potential. These are not statistics, they are futures unshackled. Now think of yourself, what have you endured? What dream did you set aside because others doubted you? What skill did you bury because no one cared to notice? Bring it forward, write it here. Someone reading may need your courage to find their own. The call to action is not only to share but to build. Subscribe not for numbers but for community. Each story multiplies strength. One person's breakthrough becomes another's roadmap. When you write your struggle, you prove that no one is alone. When you write your victory, you remind us that triumph is possible. Amara's journey began with invisibility, but ended with a platform large enough to invite countless others. Yours can too. It does not require a hotel lobby or a chandelier. It involves truth, persistence, and the audacity to believe your worth exceeds their recognition. Prejudice wants silence. It thrives when you doubt yourself. But courage speaks, even in whispers, and whispers grow into roars. Share your whisper here. Tell us the job you lost, but the lesson you gained. Tell us the rejection that led you to create something of your own. Tell us the classroom where you felt unseen, but kept studying until success became undeniable. These are not small tales. They are the seeds of revolutions. When Amara spoke Dutch that day, she was not performing. She was simply being herself, letting her preparation flow. That is the secret. Greatness rarely arrives with fanfare. It comes in moments where integrity meets opportunity. And when someone finally listens, the world shifts. So subscribe, not to watch passively, but to act actively. Each story shared here becomes part of a collective testimony. Together we expose bias, dismantle barriers, and prove talent cannot be erased. The most significant change always begins with one voice, but one voice joined by another becomes unstoppable. Perhaps you doubt whether your story matters. Let me tell you, it does. Someone in another city, another country, another workplace may be living the same dismissal. They may feel invisible. Your story may be the spark that tells them, you are not alone, you are not worthless. You are simply unseen, and soon you will be visible. Will you write? Will you tell us about the mentor who believed when no one else did? The barrier you climbed, breathless but unbroken. The language you taught yourself in secret, waiting for a chance. This space exists for you. Do not let bias have the final word. Do not let silence define your worth. Speak, write, subscribe, connect. Together we make prejudice powerless. Together we ensure no chandelier shines without reflecting those once ignored beneath it. Together we prove systems can change because systems are only people, and people can choose better. Amara's story is not extraordinary because she is flawless. It is unusual because she is human, like you, enduring rejection, fear, and doubt. What made her different was persistence and the refusal to shrink. You carry the same possibility. The revolution begins not with her, but with all of us refusing to bow. So share now, subscribe, tell your truth, pass it forward. Let this be the moment where invisibility ends, where worth is recognized, where one voice becomes many, echoing until walls crumble. The chandelier still shines, but it no longer mocks, it illuminates. Step into that light, speak. The next revolution waits for your voice.